How are you, Jimmy? Good to be on the show, mate. Sorry I couldn't make it yesterday, but yes, it was pre-planned that we were doing our review yesterday later in the day. So yeah, it had nothing to do with the result, as you're probably alluding to.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't do that, Madge. I'd ask directly.
No.
So, so let's have a chat about it, mate. What was your big take out of a really disappointing performance for Raiders and their fans?
Yeah, to about the 28th minute mark, they were able to bring on Big Nelson and Harry Grant. Unfortunately, we didn't handle that stage of the game very well. I think it was 6-2. We put ourselves into a position where we were challenging, and Big Nelson, if you actually go back and look at four of their tries, he was actually the one playing the ball prior to the try. So yeah, he
Yep.
skittled us a little bit and got the momentum, and then Harry Grant came on and obviously pulled us apart. So tough day out, but. We've seen many a team go down to Melbourne and be in that situation. But look, we need to take what we did at that first period of the game and apply that to where we're going now.
Okay. Well, I've got to ask you about There was an incident in the. I'm pretty sure it was. Oh, it might have been the first half where Nelson ball on the ground. Nelson.
Yeah.
It said more about desire rather than size and how difficult he was to handle. Just dived on that loose ball and was able to get an offload. That one, I'd imagine, in the review wasn't pretty viewing.
Yeah, the players themselves obviously spoke about that, Jimmy. And the players are very aware of that too. I mean, they work very hard each week to try and go out and get the result. And I think we're probably a little bit broken at that stage.
Yep.
The preparation was really, they had a great week and they really wanted to go down there and get a good performance. And we just didn't handle that back into the first half. They scored three very quick tries, and then half time came, and I don't think it was. It definitely wasn't the plan to go down there and have that against us. And I think that just boiled up into emotion. And obviously, you're sort of hungry Melbourne Storm team. I thought their defence is probably some of the best. As I did speak to Craig after the game, the best they've probably been throughout this season. So, we ran into a team with pretty good form on the day. So, we've got to make sure we turn that around quickly on Sunday.
I'm going to ask you about Jarrod Croker shortly, but just while we're on Nelson Asif Solomona, so you're looking at through dual vision, right? You've got your assistant coach of the Canberra Raiders, but I guess from a Kiwis coach point of view, you're looking at what he's doing and saying, wow, this is destructive.
Oh, well and truly, mate. Obviously, I didn't want him to do that the other day. It
Yeah.
would have been nice to put that away and maybe get that in a week's time. But look, to see him play like that, Nelson's sort of probably been a little bit up and down throughout the season, but he came out and just basically came off the back fence. And, look, we didn't handle that. We should have gone after it. But that's been spoken about. Now we need to put that to bed and move on. But it's really nice to see some of the Kiwi boys. And look, Jahrome Hughes playing really well.
Yeah.
He's a big part of that team, and he had the week off the week prior and then came back quite fresh. So he came out and did a fair bit of damage down our left edge and put us under a fair bit of pressure.
Just on that, and we'll get to a question that one of the listeners asked yesterday, but Justin Horro flagged. We talked about Johnson, Brown, Hughes. How do you fit them into a Kiwi side? He flagged Hughes going to fullback and Manu to the centres. Would that be something that you would consider for the test matches coming up at the end of the year?
Yeah, well, I like his thinking. I mean, we've got a fair bit of footy to go before we start making decisions around where they can play. But they're the options that I've got. I mean, Jarome's played fullback, quite often,
Yep.
and then that gives us a pretty strong edge there with Manu going back there. But I am obviously, and I've stated many times, I'm pretty keen to have Joey play fullback because he's a phenomenal player when he's got the ball in his hands. And I go back to that mid-year test, and even overseas in the World Cup, he's one of the best players amongst the team when
Yeah.
he's playing fullback. But you've got to look at the combinations. We've got a fair bit of footy, and touch wood, they all get through healthy. And I have that, those sorts of decisions to make when the time comes.
Is Nelson Asif Solomona best on an edge or in the middle? And I know Craig Bellamy has used him in both roles. Where do you think he's makes the most impact?
Well, I think it comes back to who's available again at that
Sure.
time. James Fisher-Harris, Moses Leota, Joey Taps from Canberra, Gerald Hargreaves. I could talk about a number of front rowers. So then you go, well, where can you put someone like Nelson? Does it fit for us at the time on an edge? I think he's really destructive through the middle of the park, but I'd imagine most halfbacks that have to look up and then look at the size of Nelson coming on an edge would be pretty scary as well. So, yeah, that will work itself out. But I played Nelson throughout the World Cup on the edge there early days, and then
Yep.
in the semi-final I put him into the middle, and he was really destructive. And yeah, it's also too how much time you can have him out there. I think when he's on an edge, he can spend a bit more time out on the ground, whereas when he's in the middle, it's the time that you can spend on the field, depending on the fatigue factor.
Yeah. If you want to ask Madge a question, get us on the text line. We've only got Madge up until about 25 past 1, so he's got other commitments with New Zealand. So 0457 736 736. We had a question from a listener yesterday, and we framed it this way. You've got the option of Payne Haas, Tino Fasua-Malaawi, Aden Fanua-Blake, or James Fisher-Harris. Who are the two front rowers you can take? You can only take two, Madge.
Hang on, so we had Aden, Tino, James Fisher-Harris.
And Payne Haas.
Payne Haas. Wow. That is one hell of a question there, Jimmy. Look, I'm going to take my favourite, James Fisher-Harris. He's definitely one.
Wow.
I think he's got leadership written all over him, and he's been playing at the highest of level. And he's probably, because he hasn't been put into the Origin arena, he's probably not spoken about as much, just because a lot of players that bounce into that arena tend to be talked about. And look, I've obviously had the experiences of working with him, so one incredible team man. And really for the other guys, Tino brings a lot of leadership and time on the field, but I'd probably have to go Payne Haas just with the way he's playing at the moment. I mean, you watch the Broncos at the moment and what they're doing off the back of him and the amount of work that he gets through. If you had those two as your front row, you've got a fairly top-level front row.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm leaving out some pretty handy players. I mean, Aden Fanua-Blake, he's playing the best I think he's played for some time now, and he's obviously, I could say the same about him and what he's doing with the Warriors. And obviously Tino comes out of the Origin arena and into his team and leads. So there's some good quality there. And Joey Taps that I've got down in Canberra, I think he was the best front rower last year within the game, and voted at the end of the year. So. And then I could go to Moses Leota, pretty handy front rower as well. So the game itself's got some good front rowers floating through the teams at the moment.
Yeah, very good. Speaking of very good, outstanding servant, one of the favourite sons of the Canberra Raiders, Jarrod Croker, has announced that this will be his final season. Thoughts on Jarrod Croker? Firstly, the footballer, Madge, and then you can tell us about Jarrod Croker, the man and the club man.
Yeah, Tuta. He's got great presence within the group. I've obviously only had the fortunes of working with him throughout the pre-season, and when I did arrive at the club, I thought Toots was probably a long, long way away from playing. Look, he's been battling his body for 2 or 3 years, and I thought it would be really interesting to see whether or not he's can get himself back to first grade. And look, to see him change his body and build it back to where he's got to now, and being able to get to that 300th game, I think it's a real credit to him, but also just a credit of how he can do things at Canberra. And look, when he was at his best, he had such a strike on that left edge. He had a little left flick, and he's terrorised players for years. And as a player, look, he's going to go down of one of the greats of Canberra. And over the years and the service that he's given to Canberra, it's not only just on the field but off the field too. You can see how he is as a person. He's a great country kid. You couldn't ask for any better bloke. He loves a beer, but he also trains hard. So he's just a rock solid fella for the club, and no doubt they're going to have him in the background of the club in years to come.
Yeah, and I noted that, he's one of those guys that doesn't want to make it all about him. Jack Whiten doesn't want to make it all about him, but it feels like there's some symmetry to the fact that those guys who's played for the Raiders for over a decade are going to finish up at the same time, Madge.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of experience that it's at the end of the season that finishes up, but it's going to create a lot of opportunity for the young fellas coming through. But those two boys have been great players for such a long period of time, and the years and years of footage that you'll go back and watch of those two setting up down that left edge, from Jack to Tuta, setting up tries to really big moments of Jarrod kicking goals for the club. I mean, goal kickers are so important, and the amount of games that Jarrod's probably won for Canberra over the last 10, 12 years, through his kicking. It just pays, for teams to get to the finals, and then all of a sudden in 19 they made the grand final, and a lot of that came off the back of going up by 6s rather than 4s.
Yeah, no, excellent point. Question coming in here from Spanky. It's a bit of
Spanky.
internal. Yeah, I know, Helensburgh. Anyway, he said, first of all, have you heard of the Bodyline series?
I have heard of the Bodyline series way back, yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. All right. That was a bit earlier. Coach K hadn't heard of it, but anyway,
Years and years of watching the cricket.
Yes, that's right. I know you love your cricket. What's your thinking on hooker now for the Kiwis with Jeremy Marshall-King out? It would seem out of contention for these end-of-season Test matches.
Yeah, it's a bit of a loss, actually. I was really looking forward to being able to get Jeremy to come in, because he really grew throughout the World Cup period, and obviously Brandon Smith at the moment, he's finding his feet and getting his form back. So there's another option. But look, I've got a few other players in mind, and that's probably one position there that we are a little light in. But I do remember I played Cody Nicarima. We played against Great Britain about 3 years ago. I actually got Cody. Cody went away, and I think he had the birth of his first baby, and he came in 3 days earlier, and I said, Cody, you're playing number 9, and he absolutely went out and killed it. So we got that game. So you'll always be able to find someone that can go in and do a job, and that's one thing that I enjoy, as I say, about coaching the Kiwi boys. They'll do whatever it takes to make sure that they can get the win there.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Jimmy and Madge. Madge, surely DWZ for a wing spot just for the perm in the game promo picks, says Tane.
Yeah. Oh, the flying winger, isn't it? He gets sideways when he's scoring those tries, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of his hair, the way it flows, the way it does. But he's going really well, Dallin. He's another player that, it's great to see him scoring tries, and mate, he absolutely loves playing for the Warriors at the moment, and as you would when you're outside scoring tries like that. But fortunately I had him over in the World Cup, and he's just a real team man, and I had him as captain way back in 18, and he's a good leader as well. So looking forward to seeing the selections as we get closer to the back end of the season now.
Graham Annesley came out yesterday in his weekly address to the media and said that calls from coaches and officials on referees were unfair and unwarranted, then went through a number of issues. Basically said, look, there was really only one bad call over the weekend. I understand why Graham wants to protect his team. I also understand the real frustration that coaches get when there's perceived or real lack of consistency. What's your take on this one, Madge, about criticism of officials publicly and what it might be from a deflection point of view, and how legitimate it is?
Yeah, well, coaches over the years, we've definitely used that as probably a bit of a deflection at some stages, but also too, you've got to take into consideration that a coach's livelihood on the wins and the losses come from the crucial decisions, and the consistency is always going to be talked about. Forever in our game, we're going to be talking about consistencies when you've got human beings, but it's the consistency within a game. I think that's the challenging part for a referee, is that sometimes the balance from one to the other team might be subtly different. And we actually spoke about it last week, Jimmy, about the silent 6 again. That to me is the one there that really hurts teams, because there's no scrutiny about that, and you can go back throughout a game and go, well, why was that a 6 again? And whereas a penalty, they tend to be scrutinised. So the refs themselves, they're making sure they get those ones right, because that is what's being scrutinised. But that silent 6 again, that's burying a few teams, and then all of a sudden, you can lose the game within moments. And when you've got, I'll use an example of the 6 agains. We were trying to bring down Big Nelson. But Big Nels, and I think, to be honest, there was probably a few there that were deserved, the 6 agains within that game. But then you've got the forwards lining up one after the other that basically buries fatigue within your team when you're defending. Yeah. So they're pretty hard to come out of. But look, I think there's a right in the fact that we should be able to challenge, decisions that are being made on the field, but also too long term they tend to come out pretty even in the wash. But I've always known that if you can control the team by what you do, the ref tends to be able to sort itself out at the end of the game.
Paris Sam wants to ask you this one. Watch the Tales of Tiger Town. I love how passionate you were. Immediately thought you'd be good at the wheel at Parramatta. We'd welcome you with open arms. So there's Paris Sam, getting a little bit of that there. Pearl says this. Interesting what Madge just said about goal kicking. 6 games when Zach Lomax was struggling with his kicking and a lot from the sideline. If he kicked all the goals, Dragons win. Yeah. That puts them on 28 points.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Jimmy. And, I think goal kickers, they're one of the most important people you can have in your club. I've always been a big believer that you need to be 85% above to get yourself into the top 4. And really tipping into the 90s. And I'll go back to Adam Reynolds when he was at his best, throughout the time that I was there at South. And look, he was at 86. I think he went to 89, and then he tipped above 90% in the successful year. So, as we just discussed, going up by 6s, it's the differences of your livelihood as a coach, but also too the outcomes of what your team can possibly do. And look at the Broncos. I mean, you look at Adam at the moment; they're scoring tries, but it'd be interesting to go back and have a look at the games, the ones that are very close, where Adam would have kicked those goals, which would have been the difference of the win, and that builds the momentum throughout the season.
I immediately went to the World Cup final, and there was all that talk about Jordan Rapana as a kicker. Yeah. He kicked 3 from 3 in that game, though.
Yeah. Well, I've been looking for a goal kicker that can sit into the Kiwi team and be a long term. And Jordan actually did a really good job for a guy that hasn't been under the pressures of week in, week out goal kicking. And look, you look at someone like a Cleary, and he's practicing that week in, week out. So when you go into an Origin or you go into the big games or an international game, that practice comes back on just being able to handle moments in the games, and how much you practice away, and then you have that practice in a game. The big moments in the games, they're the ones that you kick a goal from the sideline. There's the difference of your win and your loss. And you go back to and as much as I talk about Adam, I bet he'd love to have that goal kick again when he played against Penrith there when it nearly went into extra time. So goal kickers tend to thrive off moments like that because the euphoria that you get off the back of that is quite incredible. So they've high pressure, a bit like the Matildas the other night. You kick that goal or you miss the goal. That's they're the big moments, and you chase them as a player.
Player of the week, play of the week. What are your nominations for this week, Madge?
Player of the week. I'm actually going to go Reece Walsh. I think the way he's been playing at the moment and how he's chiming in. There was a play where I think Dean Mariner got a little quick play of the ball. He shot down the short side, passed the ball to Capewell, and then Capewell kicks inside. But Reece Walsh is just in everything at the moment, especially when we're scoring tries. I think there's another silent one there that Drew Hutchinson. I thought he actually did a fantastic job. We always talk about these big names of players, but Drew Hutchinson, he pushed the Roosters around, and I think he had 2 tries. He had 158 metres. He had 29 tackles, and he was a silent player within that win for the Roosters. So there's another good one.
Yeah, absolutely. You could argue best game he's ever played at the Roosters, Drew Hutchinson, that game on Saturday night. Very good. Player of the week, mate?
Player of the week, I probably just told you that one, mate. The one down the short side. I thought that was...
Reece Walsh.
Yeah, Reece Walsh snuck down the short side and kicked back inside. There's a number of plays that... another one player that I really enjoyed coaching was Billy Walters. Down close to the line, steps out to the left and come back to the right, and there was a whopping big gap, and he went through. I don't think he's probably seen a big gap like that for a while, so it was nice to see Billy score a try.
And you know what? I don't think I've seen him play a better game for the Broncos too. He was excellent on Friday night.
He's really improved, Billy, the way he's sort of developed himself. And you've got to remember, he's probably his first year of playing hooker. So, he's been a real standout, I think. And the nine's always touching the ball, and he's got to decide whether he goes the Reece Walsh screaming down the short side or an Adam Reynolds out in the open or a big pain ass. So it's a very important part of the game.
Yeah. Rooster Muzz says, Madge, on his way to Redfern, can you get Jack Whiten to swing by Bondi and drop JWH's Clive Churchill medal off? Says Rooster Muzz. They don't forget, Madge.
They do not forget. No. Well, that's sport, mate, isn't it?
That's very good.
That's a good one.
tell you what, they don't forget either, because you've got the big game against the Bulldogs this Sunday. It's a must-win for the Canberra Raiders. Yeah. Braithen Astor asked Corey Parker about the comments of Michael Maguire suggesting he was Queensland's version of Gus Gould on Super Sunday. So we might see a continuation of that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll play on there, mate. We'll play on. We'll see where that takes us. So I didn't see that one from Braith and Corey, but I'm sure there was a reply.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we heard about that one yesterday. Mate, all the best for the game against the Bulldogs. I know you've got some exciting announcements. I think they're coming out tomorrow around what's happening with the Kiwis.
National game.
Yeah, absolutely huge. Good on you, Madge. Thank you as always.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate you. Good to talk.
There he is, Michael Maguire. He's the assistant coach of the Canberra Raiders. He is the coach of the Kiwis. Got some commitments coming up with the Kiwis, of course, at the end of the year, and some announcements being made tomorrow on that. It is great to get him on the program. All right, let's get ourselves to a break, and then we're back with more.